Idaho, at least I think it's Idaho. The Idaho anti-trans bills that got passed recently are like 6 pages long.
Are you fucking?
Or the sports one is, yeah. Because all it says is like people who are born male can't like compete in women's sports.
The
Basically.
fuck does being born male even mean nowadays? The thing is, like, they keep trying to conservatives keep trying to reinforce a definition of what it means to be a biological gender, and I feel like that definition just keeps getting. I feel like that they're just worried about losing grips on it because, like, there's so much scientific disagreement. Or actually, not even disagreement. Like, the scientific community is pretty unified on this, but, like, what it means to be a biological whatever, man, woman, non-binary person, what have you, is a lot more complicated than politicians want to believe, and that makes them very angry. But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
I don't know. I mean, I had a philosophy teacher last semester that brought up like how like in the 80s like conservatives really moved hard to like restore the family, restore traditions and stuff like that. And I feel like there's definitely a fear of like losing these so-called traditions to like a more modern way of thinking, maybe. Because I think, you know, a lot of like these kind of like family value traditions don't really hold up today.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did maybe like 30 years ago or 40 years ago.
Sure.
And so there's definitely like a fear of like losing that, of this like America that like they feel like they're losing, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I understand where you're coming from. It's hard when you have a long traditional understanding of a certain idea, and that begins to get challenged as times change and more becomes known to the average person, right? Like, it can be hard to people, right? And I do have some sympathy. Now that sympathy begins and ends at the point where it infringes on my ability to exercise my own personal rights. But, like, I have some sympathy for where they're coming from, because it's like when you have an entire, you know, foundation for how you think life is structured, and suddenly, you know, a group of people come along and tell you, like, it's basically wrong, then, you know, it can be a little concerning, right? Now, I think that there's a large showing of character depending on how you react to it. Like, for example, if you learn, I don't know, like, let's go back way to the back of, you know, let's turn back the clocks way back when, you know, you have the church that's sitting around thinking, oh yeah, we're the center of the universe. And then you have some philosopher boyo come along and be like, actually, I think the sun is the center of our universe. And then they're like, what the fuck? You know, like, it's concerning, right? But, like, how people react can also show a lot about their character, you know? Lynching the person who's telling you the thing that might actually objectively be true isn't exactly the greatest way to respond to that. Criticizing people because they have gender identities which go against the normal grain of society is not the greatest way to respond to this. But I have sympathy for people who are, like, struggling to adjust, right? Because it is an adjustment. But again, that sympathy begins and ends with, I feel bad for you, but do not advocate for my rights to be taken away. I would love to get science taught in public school rather than pseudoscience. Oh my god. Yeah, chat just hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Getting a push from the left to teach science in schools rather than like pseudoscience, like creationism or whatever. You gotta like, actually, I don't know about this perfectly. Chat might need to help me. Is it still the case that evolutionary theory is still taught as just a theory in schools alongside creationism? Because the last I checked, that was the way that it was when I went to school. And I'm not sure if it's changed since then.
When I was in school, it wasn't so much that. Maybe it's because I'm like in it, like I was in like a city school, and maybe it's just people didn't like believe it in that. I know that a lot of schools like out in the rural countryside of my state definitely still do that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that my cousin was taught that So that was just evolution. It was just one of like 2 different legitimate theories
Sure.
about the development of life, basically.
Yeah, because my understanding is that that's how it was when I was. I mean, that's how it was when I went to school, right? I don't know why I'm saying that's what my understanding is. Like, that's just what it was when I went to school, right? And it would be nice. Now, I will say that if we do that, like, here's the thing about, like, especially people who are more conservative or, like, larger conservative movements. I don't exactly know how to put this, but conservatives are always on the lookout for, like, gotchas, right? Like, conservatives are always on the lookout for liberals, I guess they would say broadly. It's not entirely accurate, but that's what that's like how they think of it, right? They're always on the lookout for liberals to do like a handful of things, right? Like related to gender. They're always waiting for like some legislation where, you know, it might impose some, like, let's say that a legislature finally imposed like some law that said that like if you go out of your way to intentionally misgender a person and cause them serious emotional distress, which honestly might already kind of exist under tort law, but that's just like my own little pet theory. Do some research on intentional infliction of emotional distress, people who are interested. But anyway, like, let's say that people tried to instill a more concrete codified law related to misgenderings. Conservatives everywhere would fucking lose their minds because they would be like, aha, I fucking gotcha. This is Orwellian. You're trying to take away my basic free speech. Like, it was just,
the ironic thing is like Orwell was a socialist. So.
Oh yeah, no, it's completely ironic. But that's sort of the same thing here if we tried to implement, like, if we had the harder push from the left, is like, even if we were doing something that was like the objectively right thing to do, both from a moral and just like scientific standpoint, they're on the lookout for anything that has to do with taking away anything that they want in schools, right? And they're going to spin it to make it sound the worst possible way, irrelevant of how it actually is going to affect the development of children.
Well, it's the next clickbait content for the videos. I mean,
oh yeah, totally.
It's so easy to hype up fear over it.
Yep, every single conservative pundit in fucking ever will just make it into an entire field day. FFRF. Officially no. Okay, cool. I'm sorry, I'm reading what chat said. Alright, so chat's responding to what I said earlier about whether or not they're still doing that in schools. Yes and no. Officially no, but Christian teachers are undermining the textbooks as much as possible. FFRF deals with a lot of those cases. I don't know what FFRF is. Oh my god. This is something else that chat brings up. Ever notice how conservatives hijack the art of leftists? See the Matrix. It's definitely interesting, and it's always so ironic to me. Peter Coffin did a video about this, and then like basically did a reimagining of the Matrix from like a leftist perspective, and actually focus on a lot of concepts in the movie franchise, especially like the first movie that focuses on like the leftist principles it has. But it is ironic, right, that you have like, you know, this entire conservative movement, especially like sort of the incel movement, appropriate like ideology or like imagery and ideas from a movie written by a trans person. Because what the fuck? What the actual fuck? Right? Like, it's so ironic. But I mean, like, I don't think that's the hardest thing to see why, right? Because ultimately, I think that when we're talking about people who are, like, let's say incels or, like, alt-right conservatives or like, leftists. I said liberals, but definitely draw a distinction there. It's not hard to see why, to me, they would end up appropriating some of that idea or some of those ideas. Because ultimately, I think that people who are far right and far left end up realizing the same ideas in society. I've talked about this before. I feel like people on both sides, like, they realize that there are basic problems with, like, the structure of society. Like, both people realize that there aren't enough jobs to go around, except, you know, liberals, or I keep saying liberals, leftists will realize that, like, it's problems with, like, the structures of society according to capitalism, whereas conservatives or people who are far right come to the conclusion like, oh, it's those damn dirty immigrants who are stealing all of our God-given jobs. We gotta turn them away, right? Like, people from both sides identify the same problems, but then come to drastically different solutions, and the solutions end up being the defining quality between the two groups in a lot of circumstances, right? You have people, so like when we're talking about the Matrix, right? When we're talking about people, especially like relating to the idea of the red pill, we have people, I think, pretty broadly who recognize that there's a lot of problems with society, that society would have you believe, is completely fine. Like, society wants you, but like current capitalist society, especially corporate America, wants you to believe that everything is fine, everything is great, don't worry, like don't fret too much, keep doing your job, keep working, keep producing, everything is fine, right? And people are starting to sort of wake up to that and realize the problems. And this is sort of where the red pill comes in. The problem is that conservatives take that to take the red pill to identify, or what they believe to be identify, issues that aren't really the cause of the things that are actually causing them the stress in their life. Like, yes, there are a lot of younger men who are extremely lonely, but it's not because they live in a society which is like hyper toxic masculine and invites them to take on a certain like very negative form of masculinity, but it's because feminists and women's rights is taking away all the good women and sex workers for some fucking reason, right? Like, it's such a, like, they're so close, but end up just sashaying off into the other direction. And it's really sad, you know? It's really sad, and it makes me extremely disappointed whenever I see people like this, because I'm like, you're so close! And ultimately, I feel like when I talk with some of these people, we can agree on the merits, like, we agree on the issue, but not at the actual cause of the issue, and therefore we can't agree on a solution. So it's so hard to have a conversation with some of these people, because I'm sympathetic towards them, because they experience like the same issues that a lot of people that I know do, and that sometimes I myself do. But we can't actually get anywhere if we don't agree what the cause of those issues are. So sad. Also, I'm floating right now. There we go. Also, that was a lot of ranting. I'm really sorry. I did not mean to take that as far as I did.
Some of the funniest stuff too for me is like people leaving the left over like one reason. It's like, oh, the SJWs have gone too far, I'm gonna abandon the left completely.
Oh my god. Yeah. Frickin' what's her name again? There was a really popular lesbian YouTuber who did that recently. God, I can't remember.
I'm here talking about, but I don't remember the name. Yeah.
Yeah, like I know the chat will look at me and be like, Riley, why do you not know this person's name? Everyone has been talking about her, and the reason is, I don't know, I've been busy. Like, I generally don't pay too much attention to people who aren't worth the time, and I didn't consider this person worth the time. I saw someone cover her video, and yeah, it's literally like copy pasted from 2016. Like, what are you gonna do?
I love 2016. That was fine.
I'm not sure if love is the word I would use to describe
okay, maybe not love,
how I feel about it, but I have a lot of feels about that time. It was a time that I was alive. Let's put it that way, and leave it at that. Also, I'll just respond to this. I'm looking over a chat. Lilith, thank you for the compliment. That actually means the world to me. I don't know if you're still watching, but I really appreciate it. I'm going to read through some of this. The reason they appropriate the art of left is because left art mean... That's the best take. Actually, all right, you know what? Alan got it. Alan got it. No, the reason why the right appropriates leftist culture is because the left actually knows how to meme. That's the reason why. That's That's it. It's just that, like, oh yeah, all the dank memes, they actually come from the left, and the right just, like, changes them a little bit.
The right is still stuck in boomer memes.
Yeah.